I've had a lot of time to think and process what I witnessed and experienced in The Last of Us Part 2. And guys, what I'm going to give you in this segment of the show is my very late review for The Last of Us Part 2 and kind of go in depth here on a number of things. There's of course this is going to be riddled with a number of spoilers, guys. This is going to be, I'm going off script here, with this game, and kind of put out all of my thoughts, which I of course, guys, am going to have more thoughts along the way as I go through the game once again, playing it again, and just kind of comparing and contrasting and really just kind of, it took me a long time to really think of the right words to put into this video, and into this, this review as a whole for The Last of Us Part 2, coming off of one of my most, beloved games of all time, that being The Last of Us Remastered that I played on the PlayStation. I gotta say, guys, this being a direct, continuation, even though it's, some years later with flashbacks and such, after hearing all the noise, after hearing what a lot of people have stated about The Last of Us Part 2, the positives, the negatives, which I heard a lot more negatives than positives for sure. All of these are, these opinions, guys, are mine and mine alone. I know there's going to be some of you who agree, some of you who disagree. Overall, though, the words I would put out there, guys, is that this is a game that is, three things. Number one is revenge, because this is a revenge story, right? A revenge tale. But it's also a story of pain, which is number two. And number three is this is a story about forgiveness. And so it's three parts. And so obviously, guys, most of you, if you're coming to this review, you've already probably heard a number of other reviews out there. You've heard the buzz, you've heard the talk, all of those things. And I can honestly say that there are certainly elements that I can kind of relate to with some of these other reviews out there. I can also relate to others that are, kind of, whether it's positive or negative. I've been able to kind of see all sides of the story with this particular title. But all in all, guys, The Last of Us Part 2, to me, was it's a phenomenal experience to at least play through, in my opinion. Now, look, I want to talk about, obviously, the elephant in the room right off the bat, because obviously this is something that happens very early in the game, that being Joel dying at the hands of Abby. And was I expecting it? No, I wasn't. I was actually not. I didn't see any of the leaks, guys. I had, there was a lot of people talking that there were leaks and things were leaked out. But after kind of staying away from the leaks, and then, of course, now that I finished the game and such, I actually went back to those leaks. And for some reason, I had one of the leaks that came out from one of the employees that leaked this, former employees of Naughty Dog, stated that Abby ends up killing Joel and then also kills Ellie. And if you guys have already played the game, that's absolutely false. Absolutely, Abby did kill Joel, but it did not happen the way that, I think some people, I'm sure a lot of people actually have looked at that leak and now are kind of doing a double take on it, like that was just not true whatsoever. Now, maybe they changed it, but there were people who were talking that, halfway through the game, Joel dies, and then Abby also kills Ellie, and then you play as Abby, and Abby ends up being, you're being forced into liking this character. And that's just not the case, and that's not what happened whatsoever. You play one half of the game as Ellie, the other half as Abby. And that is true. Those are facts. But Ellie does not die, and we'll kind of get to that here in a bit. But my thoughts on Joel dying. Look, I actually am probably someone in the minority here. I'm not upset that Joel died in this game. I'm not upset about that, even though I love Joel as a character. What I am upset with, and my main gripe that I have with this game, is the way that he was treated throughout the game. I'm not talking from a standpoint of the way he died. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking when you get these flashbacks, when you see the game from the very beginning, and you see the way Joel is treated. He's tore up inside. He's treated terribly by everyone. And that bothered me. There's always something in these games, guys, that'll probably bother all of us or kind of rub us the wrong way. And it really rubbed me the wrong way, the way that Joel was treated in this game, the way that Ellie treated him throughout the course of the story. I did not like that at all. I didn't like that. It made me start resenting Ellie in a major way. And I didn't like that they were doing that to her. So all in all, I did not like the way and the direction that they took Joel's character. He kind of was a lot, softer in this, which I wasn't necessarily upset about that. I feel that, and I understand why he was that way, because he felt that he took something from Ellie by, ripping her of what could have been, her legacy or her, purpose in life, and that being like giving herself up for the betterment of mankind. And so I understand, where that's coming from, but I really felt that the reason why Joel was so, just kind of almost, quiet, sad throughout the course of these flashbacks and such, I felt that the reason he was like that was more so because of the way that Ellie was treating him and the way he was treated by everyone else. It was almost like he didn't care if he lived or died, and I did not like that about that part of the story as a whole. And I understand people not liking the marketing of The Last of Us Part 2, making it seem like Joel and Ellie were going to, go on this adventure again, on this journey again. And not necessarily an adventure, but, a journey again. And I get it. The idea of this, in a lot of ways, this father-daughter kind of game, and you see that kind of continue to be solidified throughout the course of The Last of Us Part 2. We didn't get that. And, I've seen a lot of people out there that did not think that this game was fun. They thought that it wasn't really a fun game. It was just, was not a game that they would recommend to people to really play. And I think the reason for that, guys, is, and I've heard that from a number of people, I think that people who have played this game never lets up. It's continuous, intensity overall. It doesn't let you breathe much. And what I will say about that is that it is absolutely a very intense game, but I think that people just didn't like being on the edge of their seat consistently throughout the course of the game. From a horror perspective, from just, an unnerving experience throughout the course of the game, I thought that, for me, as a horror fan, I loved it. I thought it was, the intensity was so real throughout the course of the story. Now, I will say that I did enjoy Abby's story, or her, version of, the second half of the game. I enjoyed it more than Ellie's half. I thought there was just more, it was kind of a little more eventful for Abby's half of the game. But what I will say is that it kind of, in the end, it kind of goes back and forth between Ellie and Abby. Kind of goes back and forth, and it's like this long drawn out conclusion of the game. And I like that as well. But I'll say, between the two, half of it with Ellie, half of it with Abby, I liked Abby's more. I think that was purposely put together because they probably did want us to kind of get a better feel for Abby. They want us to understand and try to kind of connect with that character somewhat. And look, the way I see it, guys, is the story does make sense. Whether we really like it or not, the story at points, it makes sense to me that, why Joel was murdered by Abby and this crew. And, it kind of makes sense to me. And even though it's hard to see some of our favorite characters, pass on, even if it's in gruesome ways like The Last of Us, I think that, there, to me at least, from a story perspective, even though there were some potholes or, some story holes throughout the course of it, overall, I thought that it did kind of make sense, from beginning to end, and it was just a very gripping experience of pain, of revenge, and of forgiveness, which we'll get to here in a sec. So overall, guys, I really liked a lot of the additions of this story. I liked the characters overall outside of Joel. I didn't like the way Ellie treated Joel, but I liked Ellie and Dina together. Abby's character, you kind of do start to connect with her somewhat. You start seeing that her past has been riddled with pain as well. And you understand after seeing that Joel, took her father's life, and you see this revenge story play out, it made sense to me in the end that Ellie let Abby go. When she had all the power to take her life, it was this idea that, look, we've both have lost something here, or many things along the journey, but let's change that right here and now. And so I totally got the end. I was all on board with what they did. It would have been interesting if they would have given us the decision to take Abby's life or to save her. That would have opened up all kinds of other elements, but that's a conversation for another day. What I'll say, guys, is this is one of the most intense games I've ever played. I actually would probably put it up there, top 3 all-time most intense games I've ever played. There was unnerving, intensity that you would just feel throughout the course of different points of this game. And unlike any game I've ever played before, it was just, Naughty Dog has done such a good job of really building that intensity, making these unnerving situations, places, you don't want to go down this hallway, or you saw something, you don't want to go in that room, but it makes you go in that room. Things like that really brought so much tension to the experience. And I can see why some people didn't like it, because it was just so intense at the end of the day. So overall, guys, my experiences with The Last of Us Part 2 are, twofold here. I thought the first half of the game, I got that they were trying to kind of build that setting and such, and, with Ellie, kind of go on this next journey. What I will say is the things that I didn't like about The Last of Us Part 2 that I, didn't like as much as that of The Last of Us Part 1, I thought that The Last of Us Part 1, I really liked the variety of the different places that we were seeing, whereas this was all Seattle in Last of Us Part 2. Part 1, I've never had an experience like going through Pittsburgh, a place where that's, close to home for me. And, that was such a really, that was such a huge moment for me, just going through there in The Last of Us Part 1, but also going through all these other different cities and such, traveling across the United States with, Joel and Ellie. It was unlike anything. And this was more of that, vengeance, that revenge story that has a lot of twists and turns as you go. And so it's a different style, right? As far as the visuals go, I thought the visuals were great. I thought that this game would have been perfect for having multiple different locations and such. But I understand the direction that they went here. This is a different take on this. This is a darker story than even that of the first one. I would have also liked to see more of like the origins, or, start trying to find out the origins of what started this entire infection in the first place. I would have liked to start kind of going in that direction, but they didn't do that. Maybe they'll do that with The Last of Us Part 3. It's hard to say. But all in all, guys, I really liked this game. I thought that overall, sure, there were things I didn't like, that being like Joel. The way that he was treated, it's terrible that the way that he was treated by others in this game. And I'm not talking about his death here. I thought there was a good chance that he was going to die, actually. I kind of felt in The Last of Us Part 1, it was almost like Joel was passing the torch onto Ellie. And so with this second one, when we started seeing the marketing and such for it, I kind of felt, Joel is going to be in this game, but we might be moving on from him, and Ellie will be like the focal point essentially for it. And, lo and behold, that's pretty much what happened. Now, the way he died and such, that's another conversation for another day. But I understood, the direction that they were going in, and from a story perspective. I've heard multiple people actually within the movie industry who didn't play the game but watched all the cutscenes, and there was a number of people within the movie industry that have stated that if this was going to be if this could get nominated for an Academy Award, which is the Oscars, guys, the biggest award that you can get in filmmaking, this would win everything. You would just give it all to The Last of Us Part 2, because from a story perspective and just from a perspective of pain and vengeance and forgiveness and such, it is something unlike anything we've really ever seen before. And I think there's this uncomfortable feeling, talking about The Last of Us Part 2, and that's why a lot of people just don't really, they feel a certain way about it, and it's so split between. I think a lot of the issues have come, though, from Joel, in the way, the mistreatment of Joel, and I agree, I don't like the way he was treated in the game. Him dying, though, even though I wish we still could have had Joel throughout the course of the rest of the game, I understood it. I understood that this is The Last of Us, guys. That's what this game is called. It is, this is going to be a circle of people that probably gets smaller and smaller with time. I just hope that they start to kind of try to figure out, they almost work together to try and figure out how did this infection happen and what do we got to do to stop it. And so with that, at the end of the game, guys, of course, Ellie and Abby are fighting, which I thought was a very intense sequence throughout the course of it. And I got to say that it was the way that it ended, even though it would have been interesting to have the choice whether to kill or save Abby, I think I was okay with this idea that she forgave her. And I know she didn't say it, but that was the feeling I got was, look, it's over. You go and do, live your life. I'll do, and do my life. And when the two leave and you have, of course, when you have, Ellie go back to the house and Dina is gone and the kid is gone, it was an interesting feeling I had walking through that empty house. And then, of course, once we got to that point, and we, essentially, guys, when she starts playing the guitar, and then she puts the guitar down over near the windowsill, and she leaves the building, or leaves the house, and you see her walk out, and then that's the end of the game. That moment was very interesting to me. I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts in the comment section down below about that moment in The Last of Us Part 2, which was the very end of the game. What I got, though, was it was the last thing, the last memory that she had of Joel. And what I took from it was she put that guitar near the windowsill, or on the windowsill, basically giving us this, implying that the story's still open. Like, her connection to Joel is still open. She didn't put it back in the case. She left it out. Like, she's going to come back, and she's going to play it again, almost. And she's going to reminisce of the past and such. And I loved how Joel and Ellie, the one thing I did like was at the end, in the very end, that last cutscene with her and Joel kind of showed us that she did forgive him for what the decision that he made. In a very interesting way. It was a different way. It was a very Ellie type of way, but I did like that. That was the one thing I did like pretty much at the end of the game when she essentially said, that she would kind of forgive him for this. And when she's walking away, it's almost like there's unfinished business, whether it's to go find Dina, whether it is to go get Abby, whether it's to find out what caused all of this. The story's still open. And that's why I believe we're definitely going to get a Last of Us Part 3. And overall, guys, it was one of the most intense experiences of my life as far as from a video game perspective. It was one of the most, outside of intense, it was one of those stories that I connected with in a number of ways from my video game experiences, and having really I think what they were trying to kind of get across was that forgiving people is a very powerful thing. No matter what they've done to you throughout the course of life, forgiving somebody is a powerful thing. And when you have forgiveness, guys, and you're able to kind of move on, there's almost like a relief that it's almost like lifted from you, that you don't have to worry about it anymore. You don't have to hold a grudge anymore. You don't have to, have this, this feeling of needing that revenge and such. And I just thought that there was a lot of really good messages in The Last of Us Part 2. And that's my opinion and my review, even though it was kind of scattered, guys. I didn't go as much in detail about specific things, even though I did enjoy the gameplay overall. It felt a lot like The Last of Us Part 1. The characters overall, it was kind of more of the same. I love that father-daughter feeling in The Last of Us Part 1. Like Ellie was almost becoming like a daughter to Joel. I love that concept, don't get me wrong. But, I just loved pretty much everything about this game outside of a few things. And I am really hopeful that in the future they take this story and they continue running with it, but we move in a direction where we try to find out who's behind the infection. Is it some kind of big corporation or something that was behind all of this? It's going to be interesting, guys, and I'm excited about it. Overall, guys, I thought The Last of Us Part 2 is absolutely not for everybody. But it's definitely worth the playthrough, in my opinion. I think it's definitely worth playing it, trying it out, seeing what you think. If it's too intense for you, it will not be for the weak of heart, so to speak, guys. It is an intense experience from pretty much beginning to end. But that is my review of The Last of Us Part 2, guys. Let me know, what did you guys think about it in the comment section down below. And for more The Last of Us Part 2 content and videos, stay here with Zero TV.